15.
Thank you, Georgina, and thank you all for coming. I thought I'd start today by talking about the olm. It is an aquatic salamander that lives in caves in Central Europe. It is about 1 foot long and is as pale as the caves are dark. It is almost translucent. It has these tiny, very delicate limbs and uses its tail to swim through these dark waters. It doesn't need eyes, which are trophy early in life, but can feel the bioelectric field of other organisms. And it can feel light through its skin. So if you were to shine a torch on it, it would swim away. It can live up to 100 years, and it can survive 10 years without food. It has been around since the time of the dinosaurs, survived what wiped them out, the Earth's collisions with an asteroid, great changes in the planet's climate. And yet, for the first time in this species' 110 million year history, is it beginning to disappear? And this is all because of us. It needs cool, clean water to survive and is struggling in our increasingly polluted waters. It was then, although I think it's been brewing for a long time, that I decided to write this book. And I felt I had to tell the stories of these species, partly because of their vulnerability, but also because they cannot speak for themselves. This here is an engraving I made of an Asiatic cheetah. How many do you think are left in the wild today? Can anyone give a guess? 100? It's thought there are just 12, and just 2 of them are thought to be female. They once ranged from India to the northwest of the Arabian Peninsula, but are now confined to Iran. And this is due to conversion of their grasslands for agriculture, hunting, poaching, and more recently, because of collisions with vehicles. Cheetahs around the world have been reduced to just 9% of their original range. And so why it was important for me to have the cheetah on the front cover of my book is because I felt if such a majestic animal, the fastest land mammal in the world, could be made so vulnerable, I thought what hope was there for, or is there for, maybe slightly less glamorous organisms, creatures like plankton. Now, if you can all take a deep breath, so all together. Half of the oxygen that just entered our lungs was made by plankton. And like plants on land, plankton don't just produce oxygen, but they also absorb a huge amount of carbon dioxide. So they absorb 1/4 of all the CO2 we emit. What's happening is that we're allowing so much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that their ability to absorb it has been outpaced. This CO2 enters our oceans and it makes it more acidic. Some of these plankton have shells, and these shells are being corroded because of the water being more acidic. Climate change is causing our seas to warm, and this is also affecting plankton. They do so many important things, and one of the coolest things they do is that there's a certain species of plankton that when it's eaten by another, it emits this chemical called dimethyl sulfide. Dimethyl sulfide is what gives the sea its particular aroma. And this goes into the atmosphere, it reacts with light, and it forms clouds. So these tiny, often microscopic organisms at the base of the chain of life have the ability to form clouds which keep us cool. When I'm choosing which animals and which species to draw, I'm often drawn, well, it's partly to do with their stories, but it's also to do with their forms. I'm very drawn to quite geometric forms, so birds and beetles, beaks and wings. And so here is a dung beetle. Now, you might have seen dung beetles. We've got 60 species, over 60 species in Britain. And they are so important. They take dung and they bring it back into the soil, so feed the ground. By boring these little tunnels, they aerate the soil, they allow water to drain, and they clear the ground so preventing the spread of disease. Dung beetles are responsible for clearing up to 70% of all the dung in the Serengeti. For a lot of dung beetles, male and females meet by pats of dung. And the male will do this handstand and strike its bristly legs against its abdomen, releasing hormones. And if the female, also he presents the female with a ball of dung. And if the female likes him, she'll climb on top of the ball. They make a ball of dung together, and then she'll climb on top of the ball, and he'll roll her away, which I always think is very romantic. This particular species I've done here is native to South Africa, and it is remarkable because it is the only species apart from our own which we know of which is able to navigate by the light of the Milky Way. The pupils of its eyes cannot distinguish between individual stars, but they see the Milky Way as a single beam. And how dung beetles roll balls of dung is that they do so upside down and backwards. So they have their forelegs to the ground, to the earth, and their back legs to the sky. And these balls of dung are often quite a lot bigger than themselves, but they roll this ball, and every so often they get up onto the ball of dung, and they look up at the night sky, and they refer back to it every time they get back, and then they descend, they roll the ball, they get back up, and they refer back to it every time they get back onto the ball of dung. And how a brain the size of a sesame seed is able to hold such complexity and judge such infinitesimally small changes, we just don't know. I was in a school recently, and I asked the pupils, it was a class of about 30, and I asked the pupils who had seen the Milky Way before, and only 3 of them put their hands up. So we are not just making the task of this incredibly important, industrious little creature all the harder, but we are also depriving ourselves of an incredibly important human experience to be able to see our galaxy. The last species I would like to talk about are orcas. And this is a collagraph I did of a pair of orcas. They have always meant a lot to me, I think, ever since I was little. And I think you just have to look at footage of their eyes. And you can see that these animals hold so much intelligence, so much depth, and so much soul. Complex song is their language. Each family of orca, each pod, has its own song. Knowledge is passed down from generation to generation. There is a pod of orcas that lives off the west coast of Britain, known as the West Coast Community. One of its females was caught in a net in 2016, and the autopsy found that she had the highest levels ever recorded of the man-made chemicals known as PCBs ever found. PCBs are found from paints to plastics to electrical transmitters. They get stored in our fat, they reduce fertility, and they cause cancer. And it was found that this orca had never been able to produce a calf. Indeed, her family have not been able to produce a calf since the 1990s, when records began. So this family will go extinct, and with it, their unique language. I forgot to say also that orcas have been observed that when they see the northern lights or the full moon, their pitch of song heightens. In the 18 months it took me to research this book, 107 species were declared extinct. And these are just the ones we know about. There are going to be many more that we haven't encountered yet that will disappear before we've even met them. These species don't just make our world a richer, a more beautiful, a more interesting place to live, but they also make it habitable. It is hard enough to come to terms with the loss of a person, but even after 3 years of just looking at this one project and researching, drawing these animals, learning about them, I still find it very hard to come to terms, to get to grips with the idea of a species being wiped from the face of the earth, not to return. Yet I have hope, and I have hope for 3 reasons. The first is that if we allow nature to recover, it will, and it will remarkably quickly. The second is that our choices really matter. So I find it very empowering that whether it's what I choose to buy, to eat, how I travel, these have an impact, however small, but they have an impact on the rest of the planet, on other people, on other species. And collectively, these choices together make a huge difference. Finally, we are the greatest problem solvers this world has seen. We are the first species to cause a great mass extinction. But what if we were the first to halt one? I've still got time, so I wanted to end on a reading from the first chapter of my book called Planet Earth. And it is about the photograph we all know as Earthrise, which was taken by the crew from the Apollo 8 mission, which was sent to find landing sites on the moon. It was taken on the 24th of December 1968, and this is a short extract from that chapter about this photograph. This is a colograph I made of the photograph known as Earthrise. And that was the image they brought back. The Earth, bright with colour, glows beside the monochrome edge of the moon and hangs in the emptiness of space. In the photograph, you can see the gleaming oceans and the swirling whirls of cloud. Through the gaps in these, you can just discern the browns and greens of Africa. Even from 376,000 kilometers away, the planet looks as if it is dynamic, alive. They had gone for the moon, but returned with the Earth. The earliest photographs of our planet were blurry fragments of the whole. This was the first time anyone had taken a colour photograph of the Earth with the moon. It showed how beautiful the world was, how vulnerable, how alone, and how unlike anything else. It emerges from an infinite darkness, blacker than night. Earthrise was photographed at the height of the Cold War. As a matter of prestige, both the USSR and the USA were in a race to the moon. The Apollo 8 mission was sent to find landing sites, not to photograph Earth. During the entire existence of our species, this unintended moment was the first in which we're able to see the Earth's beauty in its wholeness. 50 years after the Earthrise photograph was taken, Frank Borman, who was one of the astronauts, said, "What they should have sent was poets, because I don't think we captured in its entirety the grandeur of what we had seen." Bilanders, who pressed the shutter release, observed, "We were all awestruck at the beauty of Earth in its color against the blackness of space." And Jim Lovell, just after the Apollo 8 mission returned, said, "You really don't understand what you have here until you leave it." Thank you.